The Donald Trump administration is witnessing a truly historic shift in rhetoric regarding Ukraine. And after Donald Trump has been praising Ukraine's resilience for several weeks now, calling for support for Ukraine, and even admits that it is Vladimir Putin who does not want to end the war, even his Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth suddenly became a fierce supporter of Ukraine. United States Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth stated that real firepower will soon arrive in Ukraine, which will help fight against the Russian occupier. Moreover, Pete Hegseth will finally attend the Ramstein format summit, where the issue of supplying weapons to Ukraine is discussed, although he ignored previous summits. In addition to this, before the meeting of NATO defense ministers in Brussels, Hegseth noted that today he expects even more countries to do even more. More donations to the Pural program, from which Ukraine receives American weapons. And today Pete Hegseth also hinted at the supply of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. I'm Alexei Pichi and today is October 15th. Before we start this episode, I want to ask you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, give it a like, and please write a detailed comment under this episode. It really helps promote the video on YouTube. I encourage you to subscribe to my Telegram channel Pichi News, the link is in the description of this video. And if you want to support the work of this YouTube channel financially, you can do so with any donation using the link. It says there, support the channel Alexei Pichi. Then, choose any support option that is convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support you give to the work of this YouTube channel. So, the United States Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who, I remind you, blocked aid to Ukraine in the spring, cancelled arms deliveries to Ukraine, and even suspended the transfer of intelligence to Ukraine, suddenly changed his rhetoric. And he stated that firepower would be supplied to Ukraine through European countries purchasing American weapons, in order to bring the end of the war closer as quickly as possible. Pete Hegseth started talking about how European countries and others should join the program to purchase American weapons for Ukraine, so that the armed forces of Ukraine would even have a surplus of weapons to fight the occupier. And just before the meeting of NATO ministers in Brussels, Hegseth stated that the United States expects increased contributions to the PUREL initiative to strengthen support for Ukraine and bring peace closer. His quotes. They will buy even more weapons to supply Ukraine and bring this conflict to a peaceful resolution. At the same time, Pete Hegseth emphasized that this is a historic moment and for many other things that are happening thanks to what President Donald Trump of the United States was able to do in Gaza and throughout the Middle East. Next is his quote. I like it. We have a president of peace. Here, let me remind you that Priority Ukraine Requirements List, if translated, means the list of Ukraine's priority needs. It's a joint program between the United States and NATO created to speed up the delivery of weapons to Ukraine. As part of the initiative, the Ukrainian side forms a list of the most critical needs in military equipment and passes this list on to its partners. The Allies fund the purchase of American weapons that meet the needs specified in this list. The funds are deposited into a special NATO account, after which the United States carries out direct deliveries of weapons to Ukraine. But legally, there are no direct deliveries. Supposedly, the United States transfers the weapons to NATO, and then NATO transfers the weapons to Ukraine. And now, at the meeting of ministers in Brussels, Hegseth declares, quote, "Firepower for Ukraine. That is what awaits us." The commitments made by European countries will soon turn into opportunities for Ukraine. And further, Hegseth noted that under Pural, $2 billion has already been allocated for military equipment for Ukraine. And today, additional funds are expected to be allocated by NATO countries, but not all amounts will be announced. Of course, Ukraine wants European countries to be able to buy modern long-range Tomahawk missiles from the United States as part of this Pural mechanism. But President Donald Trump still makes this decision. It is expected that the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, at his meeting with Trump on Friday, October 17 at the White House, will insist on access to American Tomahawks. This would make it possible to strike deep into Russian territory and potentially make Moscow a target within the range of these missiles as well. Earlier, Trump said he might supply Ukraine with Tomahawks, as his patience with Russian President Vladimir Putin over the war varies, sometimes growing, sometimes fading. But just yesterday, on October 14, Trump finally stated directly that Putin does not want to end the war. Here's an important point. As Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, stated, NATO ministers do not publicly discuss the issue of Tomahawks, since it is a bilateral matter between the United States and Ukraine. And supposedly whatever Trump and Zelensky decide, that's what NATO will do. But it became known that Hegseth will stay in Europe also to participate in the Ramstein meeting on the defense of Ukraine. And that's what's going to happen. And insiders claim that Hegseth is planning to discuss Tomahawk missiles with the Europeans at Ramstein. Because under the Priority Ukraine Requirements List program, Europeans will again buy them for Ukraine. Here the ministers paused regarding Russia's incursion into NATO airspace. There was a lot of discussion about how NATO countries should adopt Ukraine's experience in countering drones. For example, the Dutch Defense Minister Ruben Brekelmans stated that to deter Russia, Europe needs a better solution than F-35 fighter jets, do you remember? And then his quote, "I am proud that our Dutch F-35s were able to shoot down several Shahed drones in Poland. But of course, we also need to learn a lesson from this. The F-35 is not the most effective way to fight drones, and we should find much more efficient ways to do this. The Russian threat is penetrating NATO territory more and more. Well, there you have it." Latvian Defense Minister Andris Sprats said that for Ukraine, weapons capable of striking targets on Russian territory are critically important. These strikes will benefit all of Europe. Quote, "Since Russia is bombing all kinds of civilian infrastructure and killing peaceful residents, Ukraine also has the legitimate right to strike military targets in Russia as an act of self-defense." So NATO also fully proceeds from the fact that under any circumstances, in any scenario, we will also be ready and able to carry out deep strikes. And I think that this will also be an important part of Ukraine's defense and deterrence. Strike our targets, because we can strike back at yours. In general, there are more and more supporters in Europe for Ukraine to receive Tomahawk missiles to strike Russia. It's encouraging that even Hegseth spoke up, not about how Putin wants peace, but about how Ukraine should receive enough weapons to end the war on terms acceptable to Ukraine. After all, as Donald Trump himself said yesterday, it's Putin who doesn't want to end this war. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care, goodbye. To be continued.